The morning sun cast long shadows across the training compound as Staff Sergeant Maria Rodriguez adjusted her grip on the M4 carbine. Around her, the usual chorus of doubt echoed from her male counterparts, whispered comments about whether she belonged there, whether she had what it took when the bullets started flying for real. She'd heard it all before. In fact, she'd been hearing it for the better part of 3 years since joining the elite tactical unit. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. What her doubters didn't know was that Maria had been preparing for this moment her entire life. Growing up in rural Texas, she'd learned to shoot before she could properly ride a bike. Her grandfather, a Vietnam veteran, had taught her that precision wasn't just about pulling a trigger, it was about discipline, breathing, understanding the weapon as an extension of yourself. While other kids were playing video games, Maria was at the range, perfecting her stance, learning to read wind patterns, understanding ballistics in ways that would make seasoned marksmen nod with respect. The path to this moment hadn't been easy. Maria's journey into the military began not with dreams of glory, but with necessity. Her family's ranch was struggling, medical bills were mounting after her father's accident, and college seemed like an impossible dream. The military offered structure, purpose, and a way forward. But more than that, it offered her a chance to prove that the quiet girl from the countryside had something special brewing beneath the surface. Basic training had been a revelation. While other recruits struggled with marksmanship, Maria's scores were consistently perfect or near perfect. Her drill sergeants noticed, but in the broader military culture, there was still skepticism about women in combat roles. The conversations were often coded, but the message was clear. When things got real, when lives were on the line, could she really be trusted to perform? The doubt followed her through advanced training, through specialist courses, and into her assignment with the tactical unit. It wasn't malicious necessarily, it was institutional, cultural, woven into the fabric of military tradition. Her teammates were professional, but she could feel the underlying current of uncertainty. They'd work with her, train with her, but when it came to the moments that mattered most, would they really trust her to have their backs? Maria understood that combat wasn't just about individual skill, it was about team dynamics, trust, and the kind of split-second decision-making that could mean the difference between everyone going home safe or body bags being loaded onto transport planes. She also understood that her teammates' concerns weren't entirely unreasonable. They'd all trained together, bled together, pushed each other to be better. But none of them had seen her tested under the kind of pressure that strips away everything except raw skill and instinct. The training exercises were one thing. Maria consistently outperformed her peers in controlled environments. Her accuracy was remarkable, her tactical awareness sharp, her ability to remain calm under simulated pressure noteworthy. But simulation was just that, simulation. The smell of cordite, the weight of real consequences, the fog of war that descended when everything went wrong, these were variables that couldn't be replicated in training scenarios. Her commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel James Harrison, had been watching her progress with interest. A 20-year veteran with tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, Harrison had seen plenty of soldiers who looked good on paper, but crumbled when reality hit. He'd also seen soldiers who exceeded every expectation when their backs were against the wall. Maria intrigued him because she seemed to exist in a category of her own, technically proficient beyond question, but still untested in the kind of high-stakes environment where legends were made or careers ended. The opportunity to prove herself came sooner than anyone expected. Intelligence reports had been filtering in about a high-value target, a bomb maker responsible for several attacks on coalition forces holed up in a compound on the outskirts of a contested city. The mission parameters were complex: minimize civilian casualties, capture the target alive if possible, and neutralize any hostile forces protecting him. It was the kind of operation that required surgical precision, the kind where every shot had to count. Harrison looked at his roster of available operators. Several of his most experienced team members were on leave or recovering from injuries sustained in previous operations. He needed a full team, and that meant Maria would be going operational for the first time. As he made the decision, he wondered if he was being fair to her or to the team that would be depending on her when everything went sideways. The briefing. Room fell quiet when Maria walked in with the rest of the selected team members. She could feel the weight of their collective gaze, the unspoken questions hanging in the air. This wasn't training anymore. This wasn't a simulation where mistakes meant running extra laps or cleaning equipment. This was the real thing where hesitation measured in milliseconds could cost lives, where perfect shots weren't just about bragging rights, they were about survival. The mission briefing began at 0600 hours, with Intelligence Officer Captain Sarah Chun laying out the tactical situation on a large digital display. The target building was a 3-story structure in a densely populated urban area, with multiple entry points and unknown interior layout. Satellite imagery showed potential hostile movement, but the exact number of defenders remained unclear. What was certain was that the bomb maker, known by the code name Engineer, was valuable enough that his associates would fight to protect him. Maria studied the building schematics with the intensity of someone whose life might depend on memorizing every detail. She noted the sight lines, potential cover positions, and areas where civilians might be caught in crossfire. Her tactical mind was already running scenarios, calculating angles and distances, preparing for the kind of split-second decisions that separated elite operators from everyone else. Team leader Master Sergeant David "Tank" Thompson outlined the assault plan. They would approach under cover of darkness, with Maria assigned to the entry team responsible for clearing the second floor. Her position would be crucial. She'd be the first through several doorways, responsible for rapidly identifying threats and neutralizing them before they could harm her teammates or escape to alert others. Thompson had worked with Maria during training exercises, and while he respected her skills, he couldn't shake his concerns about how she'd perform under live fire. Combat had a way of revealing things that training couldn't predict. Some soldiers froze when the shooting started. Others became reckless, their judgment clouded by adrenaline and fear. The best operators found that sweet spot where training took over, where muscle memory and mental preparation allowed them to function at peak efficiency, even when chaos erupted around them. The team spent the next several hours rehearsing the operation using a mock-up facility on the base. Every movement was choreographed, every potential scenario discussed and practiced. Maria ran through her assigned route dozens of times, timing her movements, practicing room-clearing techniques, coordinating with her teammates until their actions flowed like a deadly ballet. During one rehearsal, Corporal Mike Stevens, a veteran with 2 previous deployments, pulled Maria aside. Stevens had been one of the more vocal skeptics about women in combat roles, though he'd kept his opinions professional and within acceptable bounds. His conversation with Maria was direct but not unkind. "Look, Rodriguez," he said, "I know you can shoot. Hell, you outshoot most of us on the range. But when the real thing starts, when people are shooting back and your buddies are counting on you, it's different. I'm not trying to psych you out, but you need to know that we're all depending on each other out there." Maria appreciated his honesty. She understood that Stevens wasn't trying to undermine her confidence. He was expressing the natural concern that any soldier would have about an unproven teammate. Her response was simple and direct. "I understand your concerns, and I respect them. All I can tell you is that I'll do my job. When it's over, you can judge for yourself." The hours leading up to the mission were filled with final preparations. Weapons were cleaned and rechecked, ammunition carefully inspected, communication equipment tested and retested. Maria went through her pre-mission ritual, a series of breathing exercises her grandfather had taught her, combined with mental rehearsal techniques she'd learned from sports psychology courses. She visualized the mission from start to finish, seeing herself moving through the building with precision and confidence. As darkness fell, the team loaded into vehicles for transport to the objective area. The ride was mostly silent, each operator lost in their own mental preparation. Maria could feel the familiar pre-mission tension, not fear, exactly, but a heightened awareness that came from knowing that in a few hours, she'd be testing 3 years of training against an enemy that would be trying to kill her. The insertion went smoothly. Using night vision equipment, the team approached the target building through a series of back alleys and abandoned structures. Intelligence reports indicated minimal foot traffic in the area, but everyone remained alert for signs of surveillance or early warning systems that might compromise their approach. Maria felt the familiar weight of her equipment: body armor, ammunition, communications gear, and the weapons that had become extensions of her body. Through countless hours of training, her M4 carbine was configured exactly to her preferences, with optical sights she'd zeroed personally and a suppressor that would help maintain their element of surprise during the initial phase of the operation. The team reached their staging area, a partially collapsed building across the street from the target, without incident. From this position, they could observe the objective and make final adjustments to their plan based on real-time conditions. Through her scope, Maria could see lights in several windows of the target building, confirming that it was occupied. The question now was how many people were inside, how many were hostile, and how quickly the team could complete their mission before the situation escalated beyond their control. Thompson gave the signal, and the team began their final approach. Maria's heart rate remained steady, her breathing controlled. This was the moment she'd been preparing for her entire military career, the chance to prove that all the training, all the doubt, all the questions about her place in the unit would be answered definitively in the next few minutes. The final approach to the target building required crossing an open courtyard that offered minimal cover. Intelligence had suggested this area would be unguarded, but assumptions in combat operations had a way of proving fatal. Maria moved with her team in practiced formation, each member covering assigned sectors, weapons ready but safety still engaged to prevent accidental discharge during movement. The night air was thick with tension, and the distant sounds of the city traffic, voices, the occasional bark of a dog. But Maria's focus was entirely on the task ahead. Through her night vision goggles, the world appeared in shades of green, with the target building looming larger with each step. She could make out details now that hadn't been visible from the staging area: bars on some windows, satellite dishes, and what appeared to be makeshift reinforcements. Around the main entrance, Thompson signaled for the team to hold position at the base of the building. Using hand signals, he coordinated the final positioning of each team member. Maria would enter through a side door that intelligence suggested was lightly defended, while other team members would simultaneously breach the main entrance and a rear exit to prevent escape routes. The plan called for speed and precision. Once the operation began, they would have perhaps 90 seconds before any defenders could organize an effective response. After that, the mission would transition from surgical strike to prolonged firefight, an outcome that increased risks for everyone involved, including potential civilian casualties in adjacent buildings. Maria checked her weapon one final time, ensuring the safety was off and a round was chambered. Her equipment felt natural, familiar, the weight distribution she'd trained with for months. The muscle memory of reloading and target acquisition burned into her nervous system through repetition. But beneath the professional calm, she was acutely aware that this was her defining moment. The breach began with Thompson's whispered count: 3, 2, 1, execute. Maria's entry point was a reinforced door that yielded to shaped charges placed by the team's demolitions expert. The explosion was controlled but effective, creating an opening large enough for rapid entry while minimizing structural damage that might compromise the building's stability. As smoke and debris cleared, Maria was first through the gap, her weapon raised and ready. The interior of the building was darker than expected, with only emergency lighting providing minimal illumination. Maria's night vision equipment gave her a significant advantage, allowing her to identify potential threats while remaining nearly invisible to anyone without similar technology. The layout matched intelligence reports, a narrow hallway leading to stairs, with several rooms branching off from the main corridor. Her assigned route took her directly toward the stairwell that led to the second floor, where the bomb maker was believed to be located. The first room she needed to clear was immediately to her left. Intelligence suggested it might be used as a guard post or storage area. Maria approached the doorway using techniques drilled into her through hundreds of training iterations. The door was partially open, revealing a slice of the room's interior. Through the gap, she could see movement, a figure seated at what appeared to be a table, possibly monitoring communications equipment. The person hadn't yet noticed the breach downstairs, giving Maria the element of surprise she needed. She moved through the doorway with fluid precision, her weapon tracking smoothly as she identified the threat. The figure at the table was male, armed with an AK-47 rifle that was currently resting against the wall within easy reach. He was wearing civilian clothes, but had the alertness of someone expecting trouble. The engagement happened in milliseconds. The guard noticed movement in his peripheral vision and began reaching for his weapon. Maria's first shot was perfectly placed center mass, neutralizing the threat before he could return fire or alert others in the building. The suppressed weapon made minimal noise, helping maintain the team's stealth advantage, but Maria's night was just beginning. Intelligence reports had underestimated the number of defenders in the building. As she moved toward the stairwell, she could hear movement from multiple locations, footsteps, muffled voices, the distinctive sound of weapons being readied for action. The element of surprise was beginning to fade, and the mission was about to become significantly more complicated. The stairwell presented a tactical nightmare, a narrow, confined space where defenders above would have every advantage. Maria would be exposed during her ascent, vulnerable to fire from multiple angles, with limited cover and restricted movement options. This was exactly the kind of scenario that separated elite operators from conventional soldiers, the moment when training, instinct, and raw skill would determine who survived the next few minutes. As she reached the base of the stairs, Maria could hear Thompson's voice in her earpiece, reporting contact on the ground floor. Other team members were encountering resistance as well, meaning the coordinated assault was beginning to fragment into individual firefights. The mission clock was ticking, and every second of delay increased the risk of mission failure or casualties. Maria began her ascent, weapon raised, senses hyper-alert for any sign of movement above. Her training had prepared her for this moment, but no amount of simulation could replicate the real-world variables she was about to face: unknown enemy positions, potential civilian presence, and the kind of split-second decision-making that would prove whether all the doubts about her capabilities were justified or completely unfounded. The second floor awaited, and with it, the test that would define her military career. The stairwell stretched above Maria like a tunnel of shadows and potential death. Each step upward increased her vulnerability, but retreat wasn't an option. Intelligence indicated that the bomb maker was somewhere on the second floor, and every second of delay gave him more opportunity to escape or destroy evidence that could save countless lives in future operations. As Maria reached the halfway point of the staircase, she heard the distinctive sound of a weapon being cocked somewhere above her. The acoustics of the stairwell made it impossible to pinpoint the exact location, but someone was definitely waiting. Her training kicked in automatically. She pressed herself against the wall, minimizing her silhouette while maintaining the ability to return fire quickly. The first shot came from directly above, muzzle flash illuminating the stairwell for a split second. The bullet struck the concrete steps inches from Maria's position, sending fragments of stone ricocheting through the narrow space. Her response was immediate and precise, a controlled pair of shots aimed at the source of the muzzle flash. The thindu, distinctive sound of a body hitting the floor confirmed her accuracy, but Maria's tactical awareness told her this was far from over. Buildings like this one were designed with multiple defensive positions, and anyone sophisticated enough to employ. A bomb maker would have contingency plans for exactly this type of assault. As she continued her ascent, she could hear movement from several directions, footsteps above, the sound of furniture being moved to create improvised barricades, and the unmistakable noise of additional weapons being brought into position, reaching. The second-floor landing, Maria found herself facing a T-junction. The hallway extended in both directions, with multiple doors that could conceal threats. Her mission briefing had identified the bomb maker's most likely location as the large room at the end of the left corridor, but getting there would require clearing several potential ambush points. The first door on her left was slightly ajar, and Maria could detect movement through the gap. Using a small mirror attached to her equipment, she confirmed the presence of at least 2 individuals inside. They were positioned to provide interlocking fields of fire that would make a frontal assault extremely dangerous. This was exactly the kind of tactical problem that had been debated endlessly during her training. How to deal with prepared positions when time was critical and backup was engaged elsewhere. Maria's solution was both audacious and technically perfect. Rather than attempt a direct assault, she used a fragmentation grenade to create confusion while simultaneously moving to a position that would allow her to engage the threats from an unexpected angle. The explosion shattered the door and created a cloud of dust and debris that provided temporary concealment. In the seconds following the detonation, Maria moved with the kind of fluid precision that separated elite operators from everyone else. She flowed through the doorway as the dust settled, her weapon tracking smoothly from target to target. The 2 defenders were disoriented by the explosion, their night vision compromised by the flash and their hearing affected by the concussion. Maria's third and fourth shots of the evening were textbook examples of combat marksmanship under stress. Both targets were neutralized before they could recover sufficiently to return effective fire. But even as she confirmed both threats were down, Maria was already processing information about the next phase of her movement through the building. The sound of her grenade had undoubtedly alerted anyone else in the building to her exact location. The element of surprise was completely gone now, replaced by the kind of direct confrontation that tested every aspect of a soldier's training and character. Maria could hear shouting from other parts of the building, some in languages she didn't recognize, others in accented English coordinating what sounded like a counterattack. Her earpiece crackled with reports from other team members. Thompson's voice was strained but controlled. "Rodriguez, we've got multiple contacts on the ground floor. How's your progress upstairs?" The implication was clear. The team was encountering more resistance than expected, and Maria's success or failure on the second floor might determine the outcome of the entire mission. "2 down, continuing to objective," Maria replied her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. Professional confidence was crucial in operations like this. Any sign of uncertainty or panic could spread through the team and compromise everyone's performance. The hallway leading to the bomb maker's suspected location stretched ahead like a shooting gallery. Maria could see that furniture had been moved to create improvised cover positions, and she suspected that additional defenders were positioned in rooms along the corridor. This wasn't going to be a simple matter of reaching the target. It was going to require fighting through a prepared defensive position while maintaining enough speed to prevent the bomb maker from escaping or destroying evidence. Maria's tactical assessment was interrupted by movement at the far end of the hallway. A figure appeared briefly in a doorway, armed, alert. and clearly positioned to prevent exactly the kind of advance she needed to make. The distance was significant for a pistol shot, well within rifle range but requiring precision shooting under combat conditions. Her fifth shot was taken from a supported position, using the doorframe to steady her aim. The target was partially concealed, presenting only a small portion of his torso as a viable target area. Maria's training in advanced marksmanship served her well. The shot was perfectly placed, neutralizing the threat and clearing her path toward the objective. But as she began moving down the hallway, Maria realized that the real test was just beginning. Intelligence reports had suggested the bomb maker would be lightly defended, but the resistance she was encountering indicated a much more sophisticated operation than anyone had anticipated. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The hallway felt like a corridor of judgment as Maria advanced toward her objective. Every shadow could conceal a threat, every doorway represented a potential ambush, and every step forward increased the stakes of her mission. The weight of her team's expectations, the months of doubt and skepticism, and the lives that hung in the balance all converged in this narrow stretch of concrete and steel. Maria's approach to the next potential threat position demonstrated the kind of tactical innovation that separated exceptional operators from merely competent ones. Rather than moving directly down the center of the hallway, she used a technique called pieing the corner, gradually exposing each potential angle of attack while maintaining cover, and the ability to respond quickly to threats. The third room along the corridor presented a more complex challenge. Intelligence suggested it might be used as a communication center, which meant it could contain valuable equipment as well as personnel. The door was closed, but Maria could detect electronic noise from inside, the distinctive hum of radio equipment, and what sounded like computer systems running. Using her ear to the door, Maria could distinguish at least two voices inside, speaking in what sounded like Arabic. Her language training allowed her to catch fragments of conversation, something about American soldiers, references to escape routes, and urgent discussions about destroying documents. Time was running out, and the element of surprise was now completely gone. Maria's decision to breach this room would later be studied in tactical training courses as an example of split-second decision-making under extreme pressure. She had to balance multiple factors: the need to preserve intelligence materials, the safety of her team members still fighting elsewhere in the building, and the possibility that the occupants might be preparing to destroy evidence or coordinate reinforcements. The breach was explosive and precise. Maria used a small charge to blow the door inward, following immediately behind the blast with her weapon ready. The room was larger than expected, with multiple workstations containing radio equipment, computers, and what appeared to be bomb-making materials and documentation. Two men were inside, both armed and both reacting to the sudden intrusion. First was reaching for an AK-47 rifle, leaning against a desk, while the second was moving toward what appeared to be an incendiary device positioned near a pile of documents. Both represented immediate threats, but the second posed an additional risk to the mission's intelligence objectives. Maria's sixth and seventh shots were fired in rapid succession, less than a second apart. The first neutralized the man reaching for the rifle, while the second stopped the potential destruction of critical intelligence materials. Both shots were perfectly placed, demonstrating the kind of accuracy under extreme stress that had made her legendary among her instructors but remained unproven in actual combat. But even as Maria confirmed both threats were neutralized, she was processing new information about her tactical situation. Through a window in the communications room, she could see movement in adjacent buildings, additional personnel who appeared to be responding to the ongoing firefight. The mission was expanding beyond its original parameters, and Maria realized she might need to accelerate her timeline significantly. The bomb maker's suspected location was just one room away now, at the very end of the hallway. Maria could hear movement from that direction, footsteps, the sound of furniture being moved, and what might have been someone preparing defensive positions. Her target was aware of her approach and was almost certainly preparing for a final confrontation. Maria's earpiece crackled with increasingly urgent reports. Thompson's voice carried the strain of prolonged combat. "Rodriguez, we're taking heavy fire down here. Multiple contacts, possible reinforcements arriving. How much longer do you need?" The question highlighted the impossible mathematics of combat operations. Every second Maria spent securing the second floor increased the danger for her teammates below. But rushing the final phase of her mission could result in the bomb maker's escape or the destruction of intelligence that might prevent future attacks. 30 seconds, Maria replied, though she had no way of knowing if that estimate was realistic. Combat operations had a way of making time-elastic seconds could feel like hours when you were under fire, while crucial moments could flash by before you could react. The final door presented the ultimate test of everything Maria had learned about combat operations. Unlike the previous rooms, this one was reinforced heavy construction that suggested it had been prepared specifically for defensive purposes. The door was steel, the frame appeared to be reinforced, and Maria could see evidence of additional security measures that hadn't appeared in the intelligence briefings. Her approach to this final obstacle would require every skill she had developed over years of training. The room beyond that door contained her primary objective, but it also represented the culmination of every doubt that had been expressed about her capabilities. Success would validate her place in the unit and prove that gender was irrelevant. When it came to elite military operations, failure could cost lives and confirm the suspicions of those who believed women didn't belong in combat roles. Maria positioned herself for the final breach, her weapon ready, her mind clear, and her training taking over from conscious thought. In the next few seconds, she would either cement her reputation as an elite operator or become another casualty of combat operations gone wrong. The steel door stood between her and destiny. The reinforced door that separated Maria from her primary objective represented more than just a physical barrier. It was the culmination of every challenge she had faced throughout her military career. Behind that steel barrier was the bomb maker responsible for attacks that had killed and wounded coalition forces. But the tactical situation had evolved into something far more complex than the original mission parameters. Maria's final approach required a level of tactical sophistication that pushed her training to its absolute limits. The reinforced door meant that conventional breaching techniques would be insufficient, and the time constraints imposed by her team's deteriorating situation on the ground floor left no room for extended siege tactics. She needed a solution that was both immediate and effective. Using her remaining explosive charges, Maria created what demolitions experts call a precision breach, an explosion powerful enough to defeat the door's reinforcement while minimizing collateral damage to anyone who might be inside. The technique required exact placement of charges and precise timing, skills that separated elite operators from conventional soldiers. The explosion that followed was controlled but devastating to the door's structural integrity. The steel barrier buckled inward, creating an opening large enough for rapid entry while leaving the surrounding structure intact. But Maria knew that the bomb maker and any remaining defenders would be prepared for her entry. The element of surprise was completely gone, replaced by the kind of direct confrontation that tested every aspect of combat training. As the smoke cleared from the explosion, Maria moved through the breach with the fluid precision that had made her instructors take notice during training. Her weapon was raised and ready, her senses hyper-alert for any sign of movement or threat. The room beyond was larger than expected, with multiple areas that could conceal defenders and what appeared to be sophisticated electronic equipment scattered throughout. The scene that confronted Maria was both better and worse than she had anticipated. The bomb maker, a middle-aged man matching the photographs from intelligence briefings, was present in the room. But he wasn't alone. 2 additional defenders were positioned to provide covering fire, and Maria could see evidence of preparation for exactly the kind of assault she was conducting. What happened next would later be analyzed frame by frame in military training facilities around the world. Maria's 8th and final shot was taken under conditions that pushed human capability to its absolute limits: multiple targets, limited time, restricted movement options, and the knowledge that failure would cost lives. Tactical situation required what instructors call threat prioritization under extreme stress. Maria had to instantly assess which target represented the greatest immediate danger, which could be neutralized most efficiently, and how to position herself to survive the inevitable return fire. Her decision-making process compressed months of training into milliseconds of action. The first defender was positioned behind an overturned desk, weapon trained on the breach point where Maria would appear. His position gave him excellent cover and a clear field of fire, making him the most immediate threat to her survival. Maria's 8th shot was taken while moving, a technique that required extraordinary coordination between physical movement and precise weapon control. The shot was perfect, neutralizing the primary threat, while Maria continued her movement through the room. But the bomb maker and remaining defender were already reacting, their weapons coming to bear on Maria's position. What followed was a sequence of movements that demonstrated why elite operators trained for thousands of hours to develop the kind of muscle memory that functioned under extreme stress. Maria's tactical movement through the room was a masterpiece of spatial awareness and weapon handling. She used available cover effectively while maintaining the ability to engage threats, her weapon tracking smoothly from target to target as the situation evolved. The remaining defender attempted to flank her position, but Maria's training in close-quarters combat allowed her to anticipate and counter his movement. But it was her handling of the bomb maker himself that truly demonstrated the difference between exceptional and merely competent operators. Rather than simply neutralizing him as a threat, Maria recognized the intelligence value he represented and made the split-second decision to attempt capture rather than elimination. This decision required precise weapon handling and perfect judgment about acceptable risk levels. The takedown was textbook perfect. Maria used non-lethal force to subdue the bomb maker while ensuring he couldn't destroy any intelligence materials or detonate any explosive devices that might be present in the room. Her training in hand-to-hand combat and restraint techniques proved as valuable as her marksmanship skills in securing the primary objective. As Maria secured the bomb maker and began conducting a rapid search of the room for intelligence materials, her earpiece crackled with Thompson's voice. "Rodriguez, we need immediate extraction. Situation is getting hot down here." The successful completion of her primary objective marked the end of one phase of the mission. But Maria understood that extraction under fire might prove as challenging as the assault itself. The building was now fully alerted. Reinforcements were likely en route, and her team's ammunition and equipment had been depleted by prolonged combat. But as Maria prepared for the next phase of the operation, she realized that something fundamental had changed. The doubts that had followed her throughout her military career, the questions about whether she belonged in elite units, the skepticism about women in combat roles, all of it had been answered definitively in the space of 8 perfect shots. Her performance under the ultimate test had proven that skill, training, and determination were the only factors that mattered when lives were on the line. The intelligence materials scattered throughout the bomb maker's room represented a treasure trove of information that could prevent future attacks and save countless lives. Maria quickly assessed the situation computers still running with what appeared to be operational data, handwritten notes in multiple languages, and technical diagrams that clearly showed bomb construction techniques and target selection criteria. The sound of automatic weapons fire from the floors below reminded Maria that her mission was far from over. Thompson's increasingly urgent radio calls painted a picture of a team under severe pressure, facing more resistance than anyone had anticipated. The original mission timeline had already been exceeded, and every additional minute increased the danger for everyone involved. Maria's training in rapid intelligence gathering proved as valuable as her combat skills. She used her equipment to photograph critical documents while simultaneously preparing the bomb maker for extraction. The man was conscious but disoriented, speaking rapidly in Arabic and what sounded like technical terms that suggested he was trying to bargain information for his life. "I have valuable information," he said in accented English, "about other operations, other targets. I can help you stop them." Maria understood that such claims were common from captured individuals, but her mission parameters were clear: secure the target alive if possible and extract any available intelligence. The decision about what information was valuable would be made by analysts and interrogation specialists, not by operators in the field. The extraction phase of any mission typically required the same level of planning and precision as the initial assault, but combat operations rarely provided the luxury of extended preparation time. Maria had to improvise an extraction route while under pressure, accounting for the fact that her original entry point might now be compromised or blocked by hostile forces. From the windows of the bomb maker's room, Maria could see that the tactical situation had indeed evolved significantly. Additional vehicles had arrived in the area, and she could observe armed individuals moving between buildings in what appeared to be a coordinated effort to trap her team inside the target structure. The mission was transitioning from a surgical strike to a fighting withdrawal under hostile fire. Maria's earpiece crackled with Thompson's voice, strain evident despite his professional tone. "Rodriguez, we've got company arriving from multiple directions. We need to consolidate and extract immediately. What's your status on the primary objective?" "Objective secured. Moving to extract with package and intelligence materials," Maria replied. The military terminology was concise but conveyed all the essential information. She had successfully captured the bomb maker and gathered valuable intelligence, but now faced the challenge of getting both herself and her prisoner out of an increasingly dangerous situation. The route back to the ground floor required careful planning. Maria's ascent to the second floor had been challenging enough when she had the element of surprise, but descending while protecting a prisoner and carrying intelligence materials presented exponentially greater difficulties. Every corner could conceal an ambush. Every doorway represented a potential kill zone. Maria's solution demonstrated the kind of tactical innovation that separated elite operators from conventional soldiers. Rather than attempting to retrace her original route, she identified an alternative path that would minimize exposure while providing better fields of fire if she encountered resistance. The plan required precise timing and coordination with her teammates below. "Thompson, I'm coming down the west stairwell in 30 seconds. I need covering fire at the ground floor exit." The descent began with Maria using her prisoner as both a human shield and a source of intelligence about the building's layout. The bomb maker, motivated by self-preservation, provided information about defensive positions and potential escape routes that hadn't appeared in the original intelligence briefings. This real-time tactical intelligence proved invaluable as Maria navigated the increasingly dangerous environment. The west stairwell presented different challenges than her original route. It was narrower with less cover, but it also provided access to a side exit that might not be as heavily watched as the main entrance. Maria moved methodically, her weapon ready despite the awkwardness of controlling a prisoner while maintaining tactical awareness. Halfway down the stairwell, Maria encountered evidence that the building's defenders had been more organized than anyone suspected. Improvised explosive devices had been placed at strategic locations, designed to channel attacking forces into predetermined kill zones. Her training in explosive ordnance recognition allowed her to identify and avoid these threats, but their presence indicated a level of preparation that suggested this wasn't a random safe house. It was a fortress. The sound of combat from the ground floor was intensifying, with the distinctive crack of rifle fire mixed with the heavier reports of automatic weapons. Maria could distinguish the sounds of her teammates' weapons from those of their opponents, and the tactical picture wasn't encouraging. Her team was clearly outnumbered and potentially surrounded. "Rodriguez," Thompson's voice carried new urgency. "We've got vehicles blocking the primary extraction route. We're going to need to fight our way to the alternate rally point. How mobile is your package?" Maria glanced at the bomb maker, who was showing signs of shock and exhaustion despite being physically uninjured. Extracting an uncooperative or incapacitated prisoner under fire was one of the most challenging scenarios in special operations, requiring constant attention to both the prisoner's condition and the tactical environment. "Package is mobile but will slow movement," Maria replied. "I can carry essential intelligence materials, but will need assistance with extraction." The final approach to the ground floor required every skill Maria had developed in close-quarters combat. The stairwell opened into a hallway that connected to the building's main corridor, where her teammates were engaged in a running firefight with an unknown number of hostile forces. The sound of gunfire was constant now, punctuated by explosions that suggested grenades or improvised explosive devices were being used by both sides. Maria's emergence into the ground floor combat zone marked a crucial turning point in the mission. Her teammates had been fighting a defensive action, but her arrival with the primary objective completed allowed them to transition to extraction mode. However, the tactical situation had deteriorated significantly since the mission began, and what should have been a clean extraction was now a fighting withdrawal under heavy fire. The ground floor had been transformed into a battlefield during Maria's time upstairs. Bullet holes decorated the walls, debris from explosions littered the floor, and the air was thick with cordite smoke and dust. Her teammates had established defensive positions using furniture and architectural features, but their ammunition was running low and the sound of approaching reinforcements grew steadily louder. Thompson's tactical assessment was grimly professional. When Maria reached his position, "We've got at least 12 hostiles confirmed, probably more arriving. Primary extraction route is blocked, alternate route is under observation. We're going to have to fight our way out, and we're low on everything: ammunition, explosives, time." The bomb maker had become increasingly agitated as the sounds of battle intensified. He was speaking rapidly in Arabic, alternating between what sounded like prayers and urgent pleas. Maria didn't need translation to understand that he was terrified and potentially becoming a liability to the extraction effort. "He's claiming he has information about an imminent attack," Maria reported to Thompson. "Something about a school, American children. Could be bargaining, could be legitimate intelligence." Thompson's expression darkened. "Intelligence about potential attacks on civilian targets, especially involving children, took priority over almost everything else in their operational protocols. But verifying such claims while under fire presented impossible choices: stay and risk the team's lives, or extract immediately and potentially miss intelligence that could save innocent lives. The decision was made for them when automatic weapons fire erupted from a new direction. Additional hostile forces had positioned themselves to cut off the team's remaining escape routes, creating what military tacticians call a kill box, a situation where enemy forces have overlapping fields of fire covering all available exits. Maria's training in small unit tactics became crucial as the team coordinated their response to this deteriorating situation. Each team member had specific responsibilities, Stevens provided suppressing fire, while Corporal Johnson prepared explosive charges to create new exit routes. Maria's job was to protect the prisoner while providing additional firepower as needed. Intensity of the firefight reached levels that tested everyone's training and equipment. Hostile forces were using coordinated tactics, with some elements providing covering fire while others maneuvered to better positions. The sound of gunfire was constant, punctuated by explosions and the distinctive whine of bullets ricocheting off concrete and steel. Maria found herself engaged in the kind of rapid-fire combat that separated elite operators from everyone else. Targets appeared and disappeared in seconds, requiring split-second identification and engagement decisions. Friend or foe determinations had to be made instantly, often based on partial visual information and tactical positioning rather than clear target identification. Her ninth engagement of the evening came when a hostile fighter attempted to flank their position using a damaged stairwell. Maria detected the movement through peripheral vision and engaged the target while simultaneously controlling her prisoner and coordinating with her teammates. The shot was taken under extremely difficult conditions: partial concealment, moving target, limited time, but her training ensured perfect accuracy. But the tactical situation continued to deteriorate. Intelligence reports were now indicating that local security forces might be responding to the firefight, which could complicate extraction even further. The team needed to complete their withdrawal immediately, before the situation evolved beyond their ability to control. Thompson made the decision that would later be studied in command schools as an example of tactical leadership under extreme pressure. Rather than attempting to fight through the hostile forces blocking their exit routes, he ordered the team to create their own exit, using explosive charges to breach an exterior wall. The improvised breaching operation required precise placement of charges to create an opening large enough for the team while avoiding structural collapse that could trap them inside. Johnson's expertise in demolitions proved crucial, but the operation also required covering fire to prevent hostile forces from disrupting the breach. Maria's role in this phase was to provide precision fire support while maintaining control of the prisoner. Her position gave her sight lines to several potential threat areas, and her accuracy proved crucial in suppressing hostile forces long enough for the breach to be completed. The explosion that followed was controlled, but significant, creating a new exit route while sending a cloud of dust and debris throughout the area. But the breach also provided hostile forces with additional information about the team's location and intentions, potentially allowing them to reposition for a final assault. As the team prepared to move through the newly created exit, Maria realized that her performance during this mission had answered every question that had ever been raised about her capabilities. 8 perfect shots under combat conditions, successful completion of the primary mission objective, and effective performance. As part of a team under extreme stress, all the doubts and skepticism had been definitively resolved, but the mission wasn't over yet. Extraction under fire required the same level of skill and precision that had characterized the entire operation, and Maria understood that her reputation would ultimately be determined by whether everyone made it home safely. The breach in the exterior wall represented both an escape route and a potential trap. Hostile forces outside the building could have positioned themselves to engage the team as they emerged, creating what tacticians call a fatal funnel, a confined space where defenders have every advantage. Maria prepared to lead her team through that opening, her weapon ready, her prisoner secured, and her training taking over from conscious thought. The next few minutes would determine whether this mission became a legend of successful special operations or another tragedy in the history of combat operations gone wrong. The improvised breach in the exterior wall opened onto what had been a quiet side street, but was now a potential killing field. Maria's tactical training kicked in as she assessed the situation. Through the dust and debris, abandoned vehicles provided some cover, But the street's layout offered multiple positions where hostile forces could establish ambush points. Thompson's hand signals indicated the extraction formation. Maria would move first with the prisoner, followed by Stevens providing covering fire, with Johnson bringing up the rear while monitoring for pursuit from inside the building. The formation was designed to maximize their defensive capabilities while maintaining speed of movement toward the extraction point. But as Maria prepared to move through the breach, her earpiece crackled with new intelligence that changed everything. All units, the advised local security forces are responding to reports of explosions and gunfire. ETA, approximately 5 minutes to your location. Recommend immediate extraction. The approaching sirens in the distance confirmed what they all understood. Their operational window was closing rapidly. Local authorities would complicate an already dangerous situation, potentially leading to international incidents if coalition forces were discovered operating in the area without proper coordination. Maria's emergence through the breach was executed with the kind of precision that had made her instructors take notice during training. She moved quickly but deliberately, her weapon ready, her senses alert for any sign of hostile activity. The bomb maker stumbled but kept pace, his survival instinct overriding his earlier resistance to cooperation. The street appeared empty, but Maria's training had taught her that appearances in combat zones were often deceiving. Windows in adjacent buildings could conceal snipers, parked vehicles might hide explosive devices, and what appeared to be civilian areas could be prepared killing zones. Every step toward the extraction point required constant vigilance and tactical awareness. Stevens emerged behind Maria, his movement fluid and professional despite the stress of prolonged combat. His weapon covered different sectors than Maria's, providing overlapping fields of fire that would allow them to respond quickly to threats from multiple directions. The coordination between team members was seamless, the result of months of training and the kind of trust that only developed through shared adversity. But their movement toward the extraction point was interrupted by the sound of vehicles approaching from multiple directions. The hostile forces that had been contained within the building had apparently coordinated with external elements to establish a wider perimeter. What had been a building clearing operation was now evolving into an urban combat scenario with unknown numbers of opponents. "Contact front," Stevens called out, his voice calm despite the appearance of armed figures at the far end of the street. The range was significant beyond effective pistol distance, but well within rifle range. Maria's training in long-range marksmanship would be tested under conditions that pushed human capability to its limits. The engagement that followed demonstrated why elite operators trained for thousands of hours to develop the kind of skills that functioned under extreme stress. Maria's 10th shot of the evening was taken from an unsupported position, at a moving target, under time pressure that allowed no margin for error. The distance was at the very edge of her weapon's effective range, requiring precise compensation. For bullet drop and wind drift, the shot was perfect, neutralizing the threat before it could effectively engage her team. But Maria's tactical awareness told her that more opponents were likely positioning themselves throughout the area, turning their extraction route into a running battle through urban terrain. Johnson's emergence through the breach was accompanied by the sound of explosions from inside the building. Whether the hostile forces were destroying evidence or attempting to bring down the structure to prevent further intelligence gathering, the message was clear: the original target site was now completely compromised. The team's movement toward the extraction point required careful coordination between speed and security. Moving too quickly could lead them into ambushes, but moving too slowly gave hostile forces time to organize more effective resistance. Maria's role as point woman required constant decision-making about route selection and threat assessment. The bomb maker's condition was becoming a growing concern. The physical demands of rapid movement under stress were taking their toll, and his earlier claims about imminent attacks were becoming more urgent. He was speaking rapidly about schools, children, and timing that suggested whatever attack he was describing might be scheduled for the immediate future. "He's saying something about tomorrow morning," Maria reported to Thompson during a brief halt behind an abandoned vehicle. "American school, children arriving, something about a bus. Could be disinformation, but the timing seems specific." Thompson's expression reflected the impossible mathematics of special operations. Every minute spent debriefing the prisoner increased their danger, but intelligence about imminent attacks on civilian targets took priority over operational security. Concerns. The sound of approaching sirens was growing louder, and Maria could see lights in the distance that suggested local security forces were indeed responding to the situation. The team needed to reach their extraction point immediately, before the operational environment became completely untenable. But as they prepared to move from their current position, Maria realized that her performance during this mission had exceeded every expectation that had been placed on her. 10 perfect shots under combat conditions, successful completion of the primary objective, and effective leadership under extreme stress had definitively answered every question about her capabilities. The extraction point was now visible in the distance, a predetermined location where their transportation would be waiting. But the final approach would require crossing open ground under potential observation, carrying a prisoner who might possess intelligence that could save lives. While evading both hostile forces and local authorities, Maria checked her weapon one final time, ensured her prisoner was ready to move, and prepared for the final phase of an operation that would define her military career. The final approach to the extraction point required crossing 200 meters of open ground that offered minimal cover and maximum exposure to potential threats. Maria's tactical assessment identified several positions where hostile forces could establish effective fields of fire, but alternative routes would add precious minutes to their timeline time they simply didn't have. Thompson's decision was characteristically direct. "We move fast and straight. Maria, you take point with the package. Stevens and Johnson will provide overwatch. If we take contact, we fight through and keep moving. No one stops for anything." The bomb maker seemed to understand the gravity of their situation. His earlier resistance had been replaced by the kind of cooperation that came from recognizing that his survival depended entirely on the soldiers surrounding him. He was moving better now, adrenaline overriding exhaustion. But Maria knew that his condition could deteriorate rapidly once the immediate stress subsided. As they prepared to move, Maria's earpiece crackled with an update from their extraction team. "Thunderbird 1, this is Overwatch. We have visual on multiple hostile vehicles converging on your area. Recommend immediate movement to extraction point. We are prepared for hot extraction if necessary." A hot extraction meant their transportation would not wait for a secure perimeter. They would need to reach the vehicle under fire and depart immediately, potentially while still engaged with hostile forces. It was one of the most dangerous scenarios in special operations, requiring perfect coordination and the kind of split-second timing that left no margin for error. Maria's movement across the open ground was a masterpiece of tactical awareness and physical conditioning. She maintained constant vigilance for threats while controlling her prisoner and coordinating with her teammates. Her weapon remained ready despite the awkwardness of the tactical situation, and her communication with the team was professional and concise. But 50 meters from the extraction point, the situation Maria had been anticipating finally materialized. Hostile forces appeared from concealed positions, their weapons trained on the team's route of movement. The ambush was well coordinated, with overlapping fields of fire that would make survival difficult for anyone caught in the open. Maria's response was immediate and precisely executed. Rather than seeking cover that didn't exist, she used suppressive fire to disrupt the ambush while simultaneously controlling her prisoner and coordinating the team's response. Her 11th shot of the evening was taken while moving at full speed, engaging a target that posed an immediate threat to her teammates. The accuracy was perfect, but Maria understood that individual marksmanship would not be sufficient to overcome a well-coordinated ambush. The team needed to move through the kill zone quickly, using coordinated fire and movement to reach the safety of their extraction vehicle. Stevens and Johnson provided the covering fire that allowed Maria to continue her movement toward the extraction point. Their weapons created a protective umbrella of accurate fire that forced the hostile forces to seek cover, rather than maintaining effective aimed fire at the team. The coordination was seamless, each team member understanding their role without the need for verbal communication. The extraction vehicle, an armored SUV with bulletproof glass and run-flat tires, was visible now, its engine running, doors open, ready for immediate departure. But the final 30 meters would be the most dangerous, as hostile forces adjusted their positions to engage the team during the vulnerable loading process. Maria's final sprint to the vehicle required every ounce of physical conditioning and tactical training she possessed. The bombmaker was beginning to falter, exhaustion and stress taking their toll despite his earlier cooperation. Maria found herself half carrying, half dragging him toward safety while maintaining awareness of the tactical situation around them. The loading process was conducted under fire, with bullets striking the vehicle's armored plating and bulletproof glass. Maria pushed her prisoner into the back seat while maintaining her weapon in a ready position, prepared to engage any threats that might compromise their extraction. Her teammates followed in rapid succession, each covering the others until everyone was safely inside. But even as their vehicle began moving away from the immediate danger area, Maria understood that the mission's success would ultimately be measured by the intelligence they had gathered and the lives that information might save. The bombmaker's claims about imminent attacks needed to be verified immediately, before whatever operation he had described could be carried out. During the high-speed extraction, with the sound of sirens fading behind them and the lights of the city streaming past the bulletproof windows, Maria finally allowed herself to process what had occurred. 12 perfect shots under combat conditions, successful completion of the primary objective, effective performance under extreme stress, and the respective teammates who had initially questioned her presence in the unit. The doubts that had followed her throughout her military career had been answered definitively. Her accuracy under pressure, her tactical decision-making, her ability to function as part of an elite team, all of it had been proven in the crucible of actual combat operations. But as their vehicle approached the secure facility where the bombmaker would be processed and debriefed, Maria realized that her performance during this mission represented more than just personal validation. She had helped establish that skill, training, and determination were the only factors that mattered in special operations. Regardless of gender or background, the bombmaker's intelligence would eventually lead to the prevention of 3 separate attacks on American schools, saving dozens of lives and validating the risks taken during the extraction. Maria's 12 perfect shots had not only completed a successful mission, they had helped redefine what was possible in military special operations. The doubts were over. The legend had begun. The secure debriefing facility buzzed with activity. As intelligence analysts worked around the clock to process the information extracted from the bombmaker's capture, Maria sat in a sterile conference room, still wearing her tactical gear, providing detailed accounts of every aspect of the mission to a panel of senior officers and intelligence specialists. The questions came in rapid succession, each designed to extract maximum operational value from the evening's events. "Tell us about shot number 7, requested Colonel Patricia Hayes, the unit's senior intelligence officer. The target was partially concealed, range approximately 40 meters. Under stress conditions. Walk us through your decision-making process." Maria's response was professional and precise. Target presented a clear and immediate threat to mission success. Partial concealment required precise shot placement, to ensure immediate neutralization, without risk of ricochet or collateral damage. Training took over proper sight alignment, controlled breathing, smooth trigger press. But even as Maria provided technical details about her performance, the real significance of the mission was becoming clear through preliminary interrogation results. The bomb maker, whose real name was Ahmed Hassan, had indeed been planning coordinated attacks on 3 American schools. The operations were scheduled for the following week, with enough explosive material already positioned to cause catastrophic casualties. Rodriguez, Colonel Hayes continued, your decision to capture rather than eliminate the primary target may have saved hundreds of lives. The intelligence we're extracting is providing real-time information about active terrorist cells that we never knew existed. The weight of that statement settled over Maria like a mantle of responsibility. Her 12 perfect shots hadn't just completed a successful mission. They had disrupted a network of planned attacks that would have devastated American communities. The months of doubt and skepticism from her peers seemed insignificant compared to the lives that had been saved. Doc Thompson entered the debriefing room with news that would reshape how the military viewed combat effectiveness. The after-action review is unprecedented, he announced. 12 engagements, 12 perfect shots, 0 friendly casualties, primary objective secured, and intelligence that's already preventing additional attacks. They're calling it a textbook example of special operations at their finest. But Maria understood that the true measure of her success wasn't found in statistics or commendations. It was visible in the faces of her teammates. Men who had questioned whether she belonged in their unit were now looking at her with the kind of respect reserved for operators who had proven themselves under the ultimate test. Stevens, who had pulled her aside before the mission to express his concerns, approached her during a break in the debriefing. His words were simple but carried the weight of absolute professional respect. I was wrong to doubt you. What you did out there, that's the kind of performance that saves lives and completes missions. You've earned your place in this unit 100 times over. The intelligence extracted from Hassan continued to yield results throughout the following weeks. His cooperation, motivated by the reality of his situation and the professional treatment he received from interrogators, led to the identification of terrorist cells in 4 different cities. Raids conducted based on his information resulted in the seizure of enough explosive material to level multiple buildings. Maria's role in these successes was recognized formally through the military's award system. But the real recognition came from something more valuable: the absolute trust of her teammates and the knowledge that her performance had established new standards for what was possible in special operations. The psychological impact of her success extended far beyond her immediate unit. News of her performance, carefully controlled to protect operational security, began circulating through special operations communities worldwide. The questions about women in combat roles that had dominated military discussions for years were being answered not through policy debates, but through demonstrated performance under fire. Dr. Sarah Chun, a military psychologist specializing in combat performance, was brought in to analyze the factors that had contributed to Maria's exceptional success. Her preliminary findings challenged conventional assumptions about stress response and accuracy under pressure. What we're seeing here is a combination of exceptional technical skill, superior psychological preparation, and the kind of tactical intelligence that separates elite performers from merely competent ones, Dr. Chun explained. Rodriguez didn't just shoot accurately, she made complex, tactical decisions under extreme stress while maintaining perfect weapon control. That's not just marksmanship, that's combat mastery. The broader implications of Maria's performance were already being incorporated into training programs at special operations schools. Her techniques for maintaining accuracy under stress, her tactical decision-making process, and her approach to team coordination were being studied and replicated by instructors preparing the next generation of elite operators. But perhaps the Most significant impact was on the women serving in combat roles throughout the military. Maria's success provided concrete proof that gender was irrelevant when it came to combat effectiveness, opening doors that had been closed by institutional skepticism and cultural assumptions. Lieutenant Jessica Martinez, a young officer preparing for special operations selection, spoke for many when she said, "Rodriguez proved that if you have the skill, the training, and the determination, nothing else matters." She didn't just complete a successful mission, she changed what's possible for all of us. As the weeks following the mission turned into months, Maria found herself in the unusual position of being both a serving operator and an involuntary symbol of changing military culture. Her preference was to focus on the job, to continue serving with her unit, to be judged by her ongoing performance rather than a single exceptional night. But she also understood that her success carried responsibilities beyond her individual career. Young women throughout the military were looking to her example, seeing proof that their own aspirations were achievable through dedication and preparation. 6 months after the mission that would define her career, Maria found herself standing before a packed auditorium at the Special Operations Command headquarters. The audience included senior military leaders, fellow operators, and military personnel from allied nations who had come to hear about the tactical innovations and performance standards demonstrated during what was now being called the perfect mission. The presentation was both a professional requirement and a personal challenge. Maria had never sought the spotlight, preferring the anonymous professionalism that characterized most special operations work. But the exceptional nature of her performance and its implications for military doctrine made her experiences valuable for the broader special operations community. The key to accuracy under stress, Maria explained to the audience, isn't just technical training, it's psychological preparation. Every shot I took that night had been rehearsed mentally thousands of times. When the moment came, training took over from conscious thought. The questions from the audience reflected the profound interest her performance had generated throughout the special operations community. Officers from different nations wanted to understand how her techniques could be incorporated into their own training programs. Psychologists sought to understand the mental processes that had allowed her to maintain perfect accuracy under extreme stress. Colonel Hayes, who had overseen the mission's intelligence analysis, provided context that highlighted the broader significance of Maria's success. The intelligence gathered during this operation led to the prevention of 17 separate terrorist attacks across 4 countries. The tactical performance that made this intelligence gathering possible represents a new standard for special operations effectiveness. But Maria's impact extended beyond the tactical innovations she had demonstrated. Her success had accelerated changes in military policy that had been debated for years without resolution. Women were now being integrated into special operations units at an unprecedented rate, with Maria's performance serving as the definitive proof that capability rather than gender should determine assignment to combat roles. The changes weren't without controversy. Some military traditionalists continued to argue that Maria's performance was exceptional rather than representative, that policy changes should not be based on individual cases. But the data emerging from expanded integration programs consistently supported Maria's example. Women who met the physical and psychological standards performed as effectively as their male counterparts. General Robert Patterson, commander of Special Operations Command, addressed these concerns directly during a press conference announcing new integration policies. Rodriguez's performance wasn't exceptional because she's a woman, it was exceptional because she's an elite operator. Our job is to identify and develop that kind of capability wherever we find it. The ripple effects of Maria's mission continued to expand throughout the military and beyond. Universities studying gender integration in high-stress professions used her performance as a case study. Police departments implementing specialized tactical units examined her training methods and psychological preparation techniques. Dr. Amanda Foster, a researcher at the Institute for Defense Analysis, published a comprehensive study of Maria's performance that became required reading at military schools worldwide. The Rodriguez mission demonstrates that when we remove artificial barriers and focus on capability, we discover potential that was always there but never recognized. Maria's personal response to the attention was characteristically professional. She continued serving with her unit, participating in additional operations that remained classified but further reinforced her reputation as an elite operator. She also took on training responsibilities, working with new recruits and sharing the techniques that had contributed to her success. The training programs she developed emphasized the psychological aspects of combat performance as much as the technical skills. Physical accuracy is just the foundation, she explained to a class of special operations candidates. Mental preparation, stress inoculation, and tactical intelligence are what separate good operators from exceptional ones. Her influence on military culture extended beyond technical training to fundamental questions about what defined an elite warrior. The traditional image of special operations personnel, exclusively male, defined by physical strength and aggressive masculinity, was being replaced by a more nuanced understanding that emphasized intelligence, precision, and psychological resilience. Young women entering military service found in Maria's example proof that their highest aspirations were achievable. But perhaps more importantly, young men entering the same programs learned that their potential teammates should be evaluated by their capabilities rather than their gender. The terrorist network, disrupted by Maria's mission, had been more extensive than initially understood. Hassan's cooperation led to intelligence that continued yielding results years after his capture. International law enforcement agencies used information from his debriefings to prevent attacks in 12 different countries, saving an estimated 2,000 lives. Maria's role in these successes was recognized through the military's highest decorations, but she consistently emphasized that the mission's success had been a team effort. Individual performance only matters within the context of team effectiveness, she said during her medal ceremony. Every shot I took that night was made possible by teammates who trusted me and covered my movements. But the numbers spoke for themselves. 12 shots, 12 perfect hits, 1 captured high-value target, intelligence that prevented multiple terrorist attacks, and a redefinition of what was possible in military special operations. The doubts that had followed Maria throughout her early career had been replaced by recognition as one of the most effective operators in military history. The legacy of her performance would continue, influencing military doctrine and training for decades to come, but Maria's focus remained on the future. New missions awaited, new challenges that would test her skills and those of her teammates. The perfect mission was in the past. Her commitment to continued excellence looked toward the future. 5 years later, Maria stood in front of another group of aspiring special operations personnel, but this time the audience was different. Half were women, their presence in the training program a direct result of the doors her performance had opened. The questions they asked reflected not whether women could perform in combat roles, but how they could optimize their training to reach the highest levels of operational effectiveness. The techniques that led to perfect accuracy under combat conditions, Maria explained, are available to anyone willing to commit to the level of preparation required. Physical capability, mental preparation, and tactical intelligence aren't determined by gender. They're developed through dedication and proper training. The training facility where she now served as an instructor had been renamed the Rodriguez Center for Combat Excellence, though Maria had initially resisted the honor. The center specialized in developing the kind of precision shooting and tactical decision-making that had characterized her legendary mission. Captain Jennifer Walsh, one of Maria's former students who had gone on to complete her own exceptional combat missions, represented the new generation of operators whose careers had been made possible by Maria's breakthrough performance. What Rodriguez proved, Walsh explained to a group of visiting military officials, is that excellence has no gender. The standards don't change, the opportunities do. The statistical analysis of combat performance in integrated special operations units continued to support Maria's example. Women who met the selection standards performed with effectiveness rates statistically identical to their male counterparts. The fears about unit cohesion and combat effectiveness that had driven decades of exclusion policies had proven unfounded. Dr. Michael Thompson, a military historian studying the evolution of special operations, placed Maria's mission in broader historical context. The Rodriguez mission represents a watershed moment in military history, not just because of the tactical success, but because it definitively ended debates about capability that had been based on assumption rather than evidence. But Maria's most significant legacy wasn't found in policy changes or statistical analysis. It was visible in the confidence and determination of the women, who now served alongside men in the most demanding military roles. Staff Sergeant Lisa Chun, currently deployed with a Special Operations Unit in a classified location, carried a photo of Maria in her gear, not as inspiration but as reminder that exceptional performance was achievable through proper preparation. The terrorist network that Hassan had revealed continued to yield intelligence years after his capture. Counter-terrorism agencies worldwide used information extracted from that single mission to map connections between organizations that had previously operated independently. The strategic impact of Maria's 12 perfect shots continued expanding, preventing attacks and saving lives on a global scale. Colonel Hayes, now promoted to general and serving as Director of Special Operations Intelligence, regularly cited Maria's mission as the gold standard for tactical intelligence gathering. The precision required to capture rather than eliminate the primary target, while under combat conditions, represents the highest level of operational skill. That decision and the tactical capability that made it possible changed our understanding of what's achievable in special operations. Maria's current assignment included responsibilities for developing new training protocols and evaluation standards for special operations personnel. Her approach emphasized capability-based assessment, rather than traditional physical standards that had often excluded qualified candidates. The result was a new generation of operators selected and trained based on their potential for tactical excellence rather than conformity to traditional profiles. The psychological preparation techniques Maria had developed were now being studied and applied in civilian contexts as well. Emergency responders, surgeons performing complex procedures under pressure, and pilots handling crisis situations used training methods derived from her approach to maintaining precision performance under extreme stress. But perhaps the most meaningful recognition of Maria's impact came from an unexpected source. Ahmad Hassan, the bomb maker whose capture had provided crucial intelligence, wrote a letter from his prison cell expressing grudging respect for the professionalism she had demonstrated. "Your soldier could have killed me easily," he wrote. That she chose capture over elimination while under fire showed a level of tactical sophistication I had not expected. The letter was classified at the highest levels, but its existence became known within the special operations community as further evidence of the exceptional judgment Maria had demonstrated under combat conditions. The decision to risk capture rather than eliminate the target had required split-second assessment of multiple factors while under lethal threat. As Maria concluded her presentation to the newest class of special operations candidates, she returned to the fundamental principle that had guided her career. Capability is earned through preparation, proven through performance, and measured by results. Everything else is irrelevant. The audience, men and women who would go on to serve in the world's most demanding military roles, understood that they were hearing from someone who had definitively answered questions about what was possible when skill met opportunity. Maria's 12 perfect shots had opened doors, saved lives, and redefined military culture. But for Maria herself, the legacy of that night would always be measured by a simpler standard. When her teammates needed her to perform, she had delivered. When innocent lives hung in the balance, her training had proven sufficient. When doubters questioned her place in the unit, her actions had provided the definitive answer. The doubts were over. The legacy would continue. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.